Hello, this is Dr. Wendy Rowley, and this is the Heartfield series. And in this episode, we're going to explore what is on the Benevolent Compassionate Grid. The Benevolent Compassionate Grid is an interim grid between the human crystalline grid, which is all the recordings of tribes and nations in our group creation, and what do people call the master grid or the Christ grid. What is the master grid or the Christ grid? It's the grid your souls are on. You come into this planetary system very evolved, very creative, very full of experience from many other sojourns and other planets. And you go into a forgetfulness and a sleep, and you have incarnations through your higher self, which records your earth history and puts them in your auric field of your inner Taurus. And your galactic records are in the outer part of your Taurus, of your 26-foot wide energy field. So your Christ grid, your master grid, has many levels on it, but it has all the humans on the planet who became enlightened and put information there involving their evolution and understandings of that, and love and benevolence and finding the God within, if you can say that. And then it also has levels of the group mastery. Believe it or not, there's groups of souls and groups of people that go into a form of mastery at the group level. And then it also has the energy of the galactic information of the continued mastery of humans in your soul's records of your sojourns and groups of souls and sojourns in other planets that became enlightened. And we had sort of started to introduce the interim grid in the last episode, and that was about a grid that's between the human crystalline grid and the master grid. And that grid is filled with all of the inventions, solutions, understanding, science, anatomy, architecture, food, harvesting, agriculture, renewal of the earth, renewal of resources, evolving beyond needing resources that are mined in the earth, evolving out of needing pesticides and chemicals and the things you use now. It's a way of benevolently creating at the creational levels with earth once you become very evolved, and manifesting and learning what manifesting really is through the creational levels. So what we're going to introduce today is the concept of the idea of the benevolent compassionate grid and how it brings forth its information. Sorry, I'm a little forgetful there. And so the benevolent compassionate grid has information on it. Your human crystalline grid has a lot of old history on it. And your Christ or master grid has a lot of evolved and benevolent information on it. So how do you get the solutions that the Pleiadians brought in that is laid in this interim grid to begin to come forward? First, let's talk a little bit about high physics. You have an understanding on your planet of electro and magnetic forces, of strong and weak nuclear forces, and you have an understanding of, not yet, of two other forces, and this will be coming over the next couple of 100 years. But these six forces posture your time, space, and reality. They posture the flow of information through the human crystalline grid. They are not so much as described by some as a push-pull engine that takes out the old and brings in the new, but they are more of a synchronized resonance, entrainment, vibration type of a system. That when certain things go on at the human crystalline consciousness akash, where you have your times where you ward and all the things that need to be healed, and when that starts to change, then as well as setups are put in place for the flow of these things, then you start to have the old move out and the new move in. So we're not being completely clear because we are actually bringing up 3 different subjects at once. And this is Aliene of Cosmic Service, Pleiadian Mother of Sound. This one and I decided to bring in information right away into a channel so that others who aren't waiting through the video to hear the information are not getting the meat. So we wanted to produce the meat right away in the beginning without an introduction. So this is me and this is her at the same time. That's channeling. So in your human crystalline grid, there is your Akashic records of tribes and nations of things created in your past history. You have lots of movies. This one loves them. They're called period movies that show different times in history through the consciousness lens of the time you were in or when the movie was made. It was actually a lot different consciousness in the past. The faculties of the senses and of physical and spiritual senses and the ability to see mental image pictures and concepts were a different part of consciousness back in those times. So you cannot exactly completely understand the consciousness of your past and why you did certain things then, and why you created as groups of peoples wars, or why you did form nations and cities, or why you did bring together people who would farm together for the greater good. All of these evolutions are changes in consciousness to a different level of perception. And it is the perception through your physical and spiritual senses that go from your body all the way to your soul that are like a relay of sending and receiving consciousness change. So that's one way that it's known that humans are evolving. And so you've laid wars and greed for wars and hoarding of goods and torture and genocide and all the things that are on the past history of your earth are laid on the crystalline grid. And this one has said in some other videos or teachings or classes that you can actually pick up rocks and gemstones and see and feel their history. You can walk into certain places and actually, with your senses, know that there was a battle there. Civil War battles in certain areas in the United States. You can go into homes and experience women in long dresses having dances and balls in some of these older homes. These imprints are there in the atomic structure of the earth through these forces that we mentioned, the electromagnetic, the strong and weak nuclear, and the 2 that you have yet to discover. That's why we say there's 6. This is coming in the next 200 years. And there's a little bit of an overlap going on between the series, The Human Potential, and the series of the Heart Field series at this time. So we have gotten a little bit mixed up. And if we say The Human Potential, when we really mean this is the Heart Field series episode, you're just going to have to forgive us because there's an overlay of subjects going on. So when humans decide and get the impulse and the impression and the healers and channelers, and they start to bring in, and other people start to feel the call at the soul level coming through their heart space to begin to, maybe we can heal this crystalline grid, because if we can heal ourselves, why can't we heal that when we get together in a large group? And there's a lot of science, and people have brought together some instruments to show that when people do benevolent things in intention, it creates a vibration one way that's measured in your upper atmosphere. And when negative events happen, such as 9/11, that are traumatic, there's another type of reaction in these sensitive instruments in your upper atmosphere. So that is in place, and that is no coincidence that that is there now. And so it has come forward, the idea, and this one has written a lot about it over the last 2 years and spoken about it, that humans can come together and clear the human crystalline grid of the charges that are there about these earlier, more unevolved or denser consciousness times of creation on your earth. This one has been to gemstones, picked up stones, seen genocide and blood on the earth, and you walk on that. And it's a reminder of that disharmony and strife. Now, this one knows in healing that there is almost like a type of charge in a healing that causes a disharmony in people. And you have within your being a pain body in your spiritual anatomy. And this one was shown long ago in her 20s, that the earth also has a pain body. There is the human grid. And as we said, these grids are many layered, and there is a pain body to that grid. And so the pain of all these experiences in your prehistories are there. So a lot of what healing is to release pain and bring in light and bring it to the surface and let it be transmuted in the pain bodies of your spiritual anatomy and the human crystalline grid. And humans can do this now. Why can you do this now? Setups were put in place in the human crystalline grid, and setups were put in place in what is called the Interim Benevolent Grid. And there have been connections made to the soul forces on the Christ grid. So it's like you have this sluice of energy and light that can lift these things up now. And you have connections into the grids that are allowing this relay of light and healing to come forward. So when you are creating in the higher creational levels, which is what you do when you create as group souls at the tribe and national level, which are now becoming global group souls because you can connect on the internet, you create a very high level of creational energy that is like a resonance signal that causes other things to shift in your electromagnetic or 6 forces over your planetary system. And these allow gateways to open and allow spiritual changes to happen at your high levels of spiritual anatomy that are connected to field levels of creation. So this is all happening now. So in these benevolent creations at the higher levels, when you heal the human crystalline grid, you create openings there for new forces to come in, for new changes in the spiritual anatomy of humans at the group soul level that percolates down into humans, and you allow advancements and evolution. We have said, and this one has as a quote on her website under some of the healing sections for her individual work, that you cannot heal without creating evolution, and you cannot have evolution without healing. They go together because it is like a release and something old goes out, and it is like a creation and something new comes in. And in between the fabric of creating and destroying, healing and creating, healing and creating, creating and destroying, there is a flow of abundance. It is another energy that is within the energies of creating and destroying, like an interim energy between. And that would be the interim grid energy. And then that allows new solutions and new information to come through. On the 3rd episode of the Human Potential, we're talking more specifically about what is on the benevolent interim grid between the human grid and the master grid, the human Akashic consciousness grid and the Christ or master grid. And so there's more information on there. But what we wanted you to understand is that there is this high level of creation going on when you work in groups for the greater good of all, using your connection to the divine, your intention of healing and creating for the greater good, and your surrender to the belief that you can do this. And we wished you to know this day, that you are creating something at very high levels of creation that has many aspects that we will talk about in the next Heartfield series video. Thank you for listening. This is Dr. Wendy Rowley with Alieni of Cosmic Service, and we bid you adieu. Peace be with you.